dilations today. A dilation is when you make a figure larger or smaller. The shape stays the same, but the size changes. So this first part says, state whether the dilation for the given scale factor results in a reduction or an enlargement. So I'm going to look at number 1, k equals 3. So I have to think about that number 3. And if I multiply by 3, am I making something bigger or am I making something smaller? Bigger. And that would be an enlargement. Now I'm going to look at number 2 at the fraction 1/3. If I multiply by the fraction 1/3, am I making something bigger or am I making something smaller? Because it's a fraction 1/3, you're taking a third of the size. A little trick is that if the denominator is the bigger number but in the fraction, then it's going to be a reduction. If the numerator is bigger, it's going to be an enlargement. Okay? So, number 2 is a reduction. Go ahead and answer number 3 and 4 now, please. I've gone ahead and labeled the vertices to make it easier for us to identify. So the first thing we need to do is identify all of the corners of triangle A. You're looking at A first because they told you in the directions that it's going from A to B. So A would be our pre-image and B is our image. So I'm going to write down my coordinate for H, which starts at -3, -3. Now I am going to look at the corresponding angle for H, which is in the smaller triangle B. So that coordinate is going to be -1, -1. We went to the left 1 and down 1. So this point is -1, -1. And I'm going to write it over here next to H prime. I'm going to do the same thing for the next point, I. And I'm going to write 0, 3. Then I'm going to look at I prime in the B triangle, which is at 0, 1. Stop it, comments. We're recording. Thank you. We have 0, 1. Now I'm going to do the same thing for J. I'm going to write the original point, 3, -3, and then I'm going to write the image point, which is 1, -1. Now I have my pre-image points compared to my image points. So I need to see if this is a dilation that is getting bigger or is it getting smaller? You can answer me. Is it getting bigger or is it getting smaller? Smaller. Smaller. We went from -3, -3 to -1, -1. So it's getting smaller. So this is a reduction. Okay. Now we have to figure out how to find the scale factor. And we do that by writing the image divided by the pre-image. So all of the coordinate points, I'm going to write a ratio or a fraction of the values from the image divided by the pre-image. So if I just look at the point H, my image coordinates is -1, -1. I'm going to divide that by -3, -3. Which gives me a fraction of 1/3, 1/3. Because they came out to the same fractions, we know it is a dilation of 1/3. That makes sense because it got smaller, so this should be a fraction, less than 1. Okay, so we took the image and divided it by the pre-image to get the scale factor of 1/3. And you can test that with each point. If you do that same division with each point, you should come out to the same answer. 1 divided by 3 is 1/3. Now 0 just stays the same because it's 0. -1 divided by -3 is 1/3. 1 divided by 3 is 1/3. So you're identifying your image points, your pre-image points, and identify your image points, and then you divide them.